Alright, all you video gamers, welcome to yet another classic Locomotive Island Getaway Edition of the DJ Smokey's True Video Game Stories. And with the title like that, we decided to go with the game none other than Trainz Classics, which happened to be a strange bonus disc that we got, a part of Train Simulator 2006. Nice! And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to grab our tickets, check the wheels, and get prepared to go away onto an island getaway with trains featured all over it as we get ready to paint the picture. Alright, this video game story began approximately 10 years ago when I happened to find this game after not playing it for well over 3 years. And I would realize that it would come with a secondary disc that I've never seen before and decided to just play this game just for kicks. And for the first couple of times playing this game, I would go into the regular mode or the surveyor mode that they would have for this game, which would feature this big oversized stretch of land with different train stops included and a whole bunch of classic trains that would be featured a part of the MTA railway system. And the second I saw these trains and said, they strangely look like the trains from New Jersey Transit. And after realizing that, I would automatically change every single name of the towns that would be featured in this little miniature railroad setup into the towns that was close to me and even way far out from me, at least a good 30 to 40 miles out, all the way up until New York City. And after a couple of hours and great success of renaming all of these things, I would put a whole bunch of trains down, only to realize that I forgot to switch the tracks and for all the trains to magically derail the second they would get to the third stop. And after I saw that tragedy, I just immediately shut down that and would check out the other great modes that was featured in this game. And one of them I would run into would be something that would change my train life forever. And it would be something along the lines of a mod in this game that would be called Modular City. And it would be this giant oversized city connected to this one lonely island with not only a monorail system that ran throughout this entire town, but also an overpass level where a train would go toward the platform next to this giant oversized tower, and even this, I do believe, nightclub that was next door to this giant oversized island that I would eventually change the name from Modular City to Train Island. And my mission for Train Island was to actually take every single train I could get from the Trainz Classic Pack and put it on this island on a different train schedule for each train, and at the same time, while listening to music, just ride the rails on every single one that I could. And as I started up the train, I would immediately scream out at the top of my lungs, "All aboard!" as I would just watch as the trains just go in an automatic pattern around Train Island, and this time made sure that the rail switches were correct so they don't run into each other, and would just sit back listening to a whole bunch of classic songs from not only Isaac Hayes, Seal, from Soul Coughing, and every sort of musical song that I would have in my collection at the time, would just sit back and listen to these songs as I would ride in the back of this train and watch as cars pass by, passengers get picked up and dropped off in other places in this town, and would just sit back and relax. And while I was sitting back and relaxing, I started to get some ideas to further improve the status of Train Island, and decided to add a couple of more train tracks along the way, with a couple of more buildings that I added to the edges of the island to even make something that looked like a Hollywood part of Train Island as well. and would even add a tiny little theater over in the corner thanks to a couple of the modders out there, and was even able to add in the far, far off distance some giant oversized building that looked sort of like the giant version of the Empire State Building, where the trains would go around it, pass back around back into Train Island, and make their way to another island I would be able to find that the monorails would ride on, known as Boga Island. And I said, wait a minute, where did this island come from? And I would look on the tiny bottom screen for it, and it would say that Boga Island was something that connected to Modula City for a little tiny tour for people to take. So I would somehow be able to incorporate that little tiny island to belt loop all the way around toward that Empire State Building I made, and all the way back around toward the island tour that it was already on, which made for hours upon hours of wonderful train enjoyment for someone who loves trains so much. But unfortunately, as much as I want to end this story on a happy note, folks, it would not. Because without realizing it while making that said giant oversized belt loop, I completely forgot to add the signal lights and the rail switches to prevent any of the trains knocking into each other. And I would pay the ultimate price one day for that, because when I was sitting riding in the back of the MTA train, not realizing while I was making that loop around the giant Empire State Building I had, I would see, to my horror, another train in the form of a monorail tour train coming around the other side of that belt loop, and in a head-on collision, all of the trains would fly into the air like confetti of sorts, for me to just scream, "No, not my trains, no!" For my dad to automatically come in and once again, as usual, ask what in the world is wrong with me, for me to show him the work I put into Train Island, and for him to just sit there and just said, I'm going back to sleep. For me to just turn off the computer and save what I did, despite the derailment that would happen, never to truly go back to Train Island ever again after that accident, until I found an ultimate solution to fix the rail system for Train Island. And I guess with that said, folks, wraps it up for another classic Locomotive Conjunction Island Getaway Edition of the DJ Smokey's True Video Game Stories. And with that, we'll be back with more right after this. So stay tuned.